Hey y'all, it is Sally Loftus with Loftus Partners. I'm super excited to join you today, and I am going to invite my friend Vera to join us, and hopefully this is going to come up. Here we join me, who was one of my editors on my book, The Pay Equity Guide to Nonprofit Organizations. Hey, Vera!
Hi, it's
Oh my
working.
gosh. How are you? Vera just got
I'm
back from an amazing vacation.
I did, yes. So it's I'm fighting a bit of a cold, but otherwise I'm doing awesome. It was a really amazing vacation and I was just going through some pictures this morning and you know how it's so awesome to look back at photos and you're just like, "Oh, so awesome."
Ah, well, welcome back. You have a vacation glow.
Thanks.
Um, absolutely. We were actually watching Game of Thrones last night, which a lot of it was filmed in Croatia.
Yeah.
This is our first time watching it, and I was like, oh, I bet Vera was there.
Yeah, we saw some of the so we were in Split, so that's where some of the
Okay.
filming was for Game of Thrones. So yeah, you see a lot of the, imagery and promotion for that. I personally didn't watch the
Yeah.
series, but I'm familiar with it. And yeah, it's such a cool place, and I can totally see it being such a great set for Game of Thrones and other movies. So yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty spectacular. Well, I'm excited to have you back. As I
Thanks.
told you, Croatia's on my bucket list. I went through there when I was 20 on a on a train in the middle of the night.
Wow.
So I didn't see much of it. So, well, thank you so much for joining today. I really am excited to talk to you. For those of you who don't know, Vera was one of my editors and on the book, and she gave such great feedback. And Vera does like really amazing work. And so I'm gonna let her introduce herself to all of y'all.
Yeah, thanks, Sally. Well, I'm so excited. I have the book here, so I'm excited to chat with you about one particular chapter.
Mhm.
But yeah, I was so honored to be an editor of your book, and it's so inspiring to watch you write the book and your thoughts. And I'm really looking forward to, chatting a little bit more about it. But yeah, I'm here in Calgary in Canada. I'm a life coach. Most of my clients are going through a major life change. So there are women that are going through divorce or job loss or menopause or empty nest or just feeling not satisfied with their career. And I really love moving them into and creating the best chapter of their life. And I'm so honored to be able to do that because I firmly believe that when we are energized and confident and feel empowered and know how to trust ourselves, we can then create such an amazing impact on the world. And we need that in the world right now, right? Like we need women who are feeling good about themselves, who know their purpose, who can make decisions that are right for them, and who can really, really impact the world with love and kindness. So, and I know that's what you do, and that's part of your mission and purpose. And so I'm so honored to work together with you on creating a better world for everybody.
Oh my goodness, what an incredible introduction. Thank you, Vera. I really appreciate that. Now, I am excited because, one of the things I really appreciated um, that you contributed in the editing and obviously into the work you're doing is that major transition stuff, right? And really helping people kind of create, figure out the path. Sometimes we can get frozen and not, understand kind of what the next steps are. But also understanding like how to kind of get the buy-in, right, to move those things forward, which is the focus of the chapter that we're talking about today, which is really about leadership buy-in. So I wanted to kind of just start and hear from you, Vera. Kind of what did you learn in reading this book and editing and participating in the process?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's funny that you mentioned life transitions and I think sometimes we can be really overwhelmed by that. And I know when I first started getting to know you and the whole pay equity process, it sounds overwhelming to me. And I mean, I'm not in HR. I've worked in corporate for 25 years before I went into my business full time. So I understand the process. I have my business degree. I've worked with HR in a large capacity in communications,
Mm-hmm.
but it can seem really overwhelming, right? When you think about we need to make this massive change,
Mm-hmm.
we want to do better, but I think sometimes corporations and nonprofits get stuck because it can be really overwhelming. So the major thing I learned about this book from you is that you've developed this really amazing process, this step-by-step process, which takes this big, massive thing that can be really overwhelming, and you're breaking it down into smaller steps, which makes it a lot more palatable and just makes it feel doable to me, right? Like, yes, we know we need to make this change, but how do we even start? Where do we even start? So I love that you break it down into, small bite-sized chunks and really take the reader along this process, and also show real life examples of people that are doing it. And for me, that was the biggest learning, that it's doable as
Mm.
long as you just take it step by step and not get too far ahead of yourself.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because I'm sitting here writing this down because that was some feedback that Lindsay, who also edited it, gave me, was like, it's just all overwhelming. And I'm like, it's funny because I don't feel like it's overwhelming. I'm like, oh yeah, we got to do this. Da, da, da. So it's a good reminder to me of like, yes, it's still overwhelming for people. And I find that whenever I'm asking people to maybe come to a webinar to learn about it and things like that, because they're overwhelmed, I think, by the thought, but then overwhelmed by what they think they're going to find, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if we know definitely we have pay inequities and can't do anything about it?
Mm-hmm.
Which is, kind of where some of the leadership buy-in stuff comes in. But
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you a question I've been asking all my guests as they've been joining, which is, how do you know when you're being paid enough?
Mm. That is, it's such an interesting question, Sally. I think, wow, I think a lot of it is, kind of starting from the basics. Like, can you cover your basic costs, right? Like, is this covering your expenses, right? Is this covering your basic needs? Like, let's just kind of start at the bottom, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then over and above that, it's like, do you feel like you are getting paid for the value that you're providing, and really feeling confident about that? And I think as a business owner, sometimes we don't feel that. Like, we feel like, well, I need to maybe charge less because people can't afford it. It becomes this kind of self-worth, self-trust issue. And so I know for me, the journey is, I offer a ton of value. I know that I really can help women, and I know that I can really help my clients. And it's really leaning into that and knowing that if someone wants that transformation, that they're going to invest in themselves. I invest in myself, right? I invest in coaching programs and have people that help me in my business. And I know that I'm getting value from that. And I need to also know that other people will do that for themselves too. So it becomes this value proposition, but it starts from within, right? It's not looking necessarily at what are other people charging and comparing yourself to others. It's do I feel that I'm getting paid for the value that I'm offering? And so it really is that self-worth
Mm-hmm.
issue.
Gosh, you uncovered so many things I want to talk about in that. Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. I was writing it down because I was thinking about how often, and you work a lot with women, and so do I, of like, I talk about this in chapter 2 of the book about pay gaps, right? In caregivers and things like that. And so sometimes those gaps are because maybe, let's talk about women specifically. Um, Women have just needed a job, let's say, have just needed a job and take whatever they can, and don't have the ability to hold out for maybe the job they're more qualified for. And then the other piece, to your point, might be like, somebody's like, well, I'm scared to ask for more,
Mm-hmm.
like kind of salary negotiations or promotions, things like that, where people are scared, or they're just like, the nonprofit, like I work with nonprofits, well, I struggled with this when I worked at a nonprofit as the HR manager, and I really struggled with giving myself increases because that was my, kind of like I was over the budget, and was like, well, I could probably take less if I could give more out to other people, which, you know, made, I guess, my mind feel better, my heart, but, didn't necessarily help anybody who would come behind me in the position. Right.
Yeah, exactly. It is the confidence thing, right? It's really like, I think as women, especially, we are not taught how to ask for what it is that we want, money or otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, we are always just giving. We're nurturing, we're caring, we're expected to look after other people. And I think those are beautiful traits that women bring to the world. That we are nurturing, we are caring, we do want to look after others, but we're not taught how to give that to ourselves first. And so for me, I'm shifting that paradigm. For me, I'm shifting that paradigm in my own life and with my clients as well. And I know you are too. Like
Mhm.
shift that thinking.
Mhm.
If you're not giving yourself what you need or want, how can you, help others get what they need or want? So it really does start from within, and having that confidence. And it takes practice, right? So it's like maybe you start asking for small things first, right? Like just in your life, how can you just start leaning into what it is that you want? But then asking for what it is that you want from a salary perspective and getting more comfortable talking about money has been a big journey for me.
Mhm.
Let's right, because it was like I was taught anyways, don't talk about money, it's not professional, it's not what we do, it's like a private matter.
Yeah.
And I'm loving all the women on social media right now that are talking about money, right? And not in a crass way, but just in
Yeah.
a like, it's money, it's a tool, it's not bad, it's not good, it's whatever we attach to it, right? But we need money in our material world to live. Not profits need money, companies need money, people need money, so we need to talk about that.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Plus one to everything. I will say, yeah, I think part of the work I do, as you know, is trying to normalize those conversations about pay, because it's something we don't don't talk about at work, but everybody's talking about it. They're just not talking about it in a um, public all staff meeting or whatever. So I'm with you. I love following women who talk about their money, how they spend their money, things like that, because we need more examples of people sharing that and being confident. And obviously, you work a lot in building confidence for people, for women. And I'm curious, kind of thinking about the leadership buy-in piece. Sometimes people can get tripped up in trying to get that buy-in because they're not confident in their skills to present or have maybe a conversation. I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but are there things you have found that help people build confidence?
Well, and especially in the workplace setting, or whether it's not for profit or for profit corporate, corporations, it's true. Like we're not necessarily taught the skills of communicating or creating buy-in. And sometimes it can be intimidating, especially when we're thinking, oh, I got to talk to the CEO, or I need to talk to the board of directors. And we get intimidated by, oh, the board of directors. But it's like, you know what? They're all people and they're here to help the organization, and their heart's in the right place. I've sat on many not-for-profit boards, and it's because I want to do it. It's not because I'm being paid to do it or because of anything else, right? And so they really do want to help. And so it's really knowing that they're people, they want to help. But what you talk about in this chapter, which I really appreciate, is being prepared for that conversation, right? Not just going in. I mean, these people are busy, right? So whether it's your executive leadership team or anyone on, in the organization or on the board, I mean, they're busy people, right? So I think being prepared and doing your homework and doing your research, which is what you talk about in the book, and I love that you talk about that in this chapter specifically. Like, get your ducks in a row, right? Think about what it is that's the key compelling message, the key compelling problem, if you will, that you're trying to address with the leadership team or with the board of directors. And I think once you're prepared and you have your statistics, you have the research, and then you approach it from, I'm just going to have this conversation, right? It's a conversation. It's not like I'm trying to persuade the people or I'm trying to necessarily like have them change their mind, but it's about how can we have this two-way street conversation, and with I guess, coming to an agreement that we are on the same page and we have the same goals, and how can we help each other reach that goal.
Mm, thank you. That was super helpful. And kind of thinking about, yeah, I think there's a level of preparation that's always helpful. And as you said in the book, I kind of walk you through that of like kind of the previous phases of preparation and assessment, get you ready to have, the conversation and have that information, but connecting it to a key business objective is a huge piece of that. And then being able to have the data, as you mentioned, around that. And then kind of, another piece is really going in with curiosity, which is what I talk
Mm-hmm.
about a lot in the book, is that so often we can go in and be like, okay, I've created this great plan. I'm going to go present it to leadership, and they got to approve all of it or I've failed.
Mm.
And, really it's more like you're starting a conversation, and hopefully, there's multiple conversations that are going to need to be had, especially at leadership level around this. And I think kind of setting your
Mhm.
expectations is good. And this is something I talk about in the book too, of like just going where the energy is. Right?
Mhm.
So maybe they're not like, okay, we're going to do this overnight, but we are willing to talk about and fund some of this. Great.
Yeah.
Let's go down
Yeah.
the path for now, even though you might have a bigger kind of goal, but like following the energy, which I think is really important.
Yeah, and I think it also leads to creativity and creative solutions, right, Sally? Because I think, again, sometimes we have this presentation and we've prepared the research and we have this, we kind of have in our minds where we want this to go. But I think your word of curiosity and being really open and having this conversation and seeing where it goes, right? Like being, okay, maybe there's a creative solution here that neither one of us has thought about, neither party has thought about, but
Mhm.
together, if we can kind of put our brains together and
Mhm.
we know that this is what we want, maybe there's some creative things, or maybe those opportunities will start opening up to us now that we have this conversation. It's kind of like in life, right? As soon as you start an intention, if you say it out loud in the
Yeah.
universe, the opportunities, ideas, people will start coming if you're aware about it. And same with organizations, right? If you can say, we really want this, but it's big and we're going to have to steer our whole ship
Mhm.
around and it's going to be, it's tough because of the market conditions and money and funding and all the other things that we're dealing with in our organization.
Mhm.
But you know what? If you set the intention, like I feel like things, and you talk about your cool kind of things that happen to you in your life, but I truly believe that, right? Like those things will start trickling in. And so being open to wonder what's going to happen once I set this intention out loud with my organization.
I love that, Vera. I hadn't even thought about that. I'm like, it's almost like you need pay equity mantras, right? Of like, but
Mm.
isn't that part of also being visionary? Is
Mm-hmm.
is saying, I see this and would like this, and knowing that it could take some time to come to fruition. But as you said, kind of putting that intention out there and that thought gets people starting to talk about it, thinking about it, and it will unfold
Mm-hmm.
whatever pace you experience. But yeah, that's a great, I really appreciate that. Setting that intention that that's where you want to go. And I feel like that's a lot of times with clients I work with is like, this is, getting everybody aligned around that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And understanding it may not happen today. I was just thinking about like a client as you were talking, thinking about a client I'm working with right now who their leadership is really kind of struggling with necessarily kind of updating some of the salary ranges and things like that, but they were really interested in job descriptions.
Mm.
So we kind of started working on that, and it opened up a whole conversation around staffing, and are they staffed correctly, and how some of their positions were more set up to kind of rotate every 3 years. Is that really the model they still want now in 2024? So that's kind of where the energy was when we started. And obviously job descriptions drive what people's salaries are, so we'll get to that, but it's just an example of kind of putting it out there and following the energy.
And starting where you're at, right? I mean, I do that with my clients, right? And you do as well, right? Like meet them where they're at. We need to meet ourselves where we're at, and with the organization, like what you were just saying. Okay, this is where they were at, right? And starting there, and then seeing where that's going to go, I think is really a powerful way to do that. Because a lot of organizations operate from, we've always done it this way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really challenging sometimes to like shift that and say, well, how can we do things differently? Because we can't even see what that looks like because we've been so conditioned to just do things this one way. And I think what you're doing is so visionary and shifting and transformative. And that takes, because people can't see it because they've never seen it before. And I think that's where you start where you're at. And you're just like, okay, let's just kind of see where this goes. And you start building and creating that vision, like you said, together. And it's going to go somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Thank you. Well, anything else you feel like you would be helpful, especially, based on the work you do with women around kind of getting buy-in, or, whether it's self-confidence or skills, whatever it is you'd like to share?
Yeah. Something that's been coming up for me this week has been the whole topic of self-trust and trusting yourself first before we can start going out externally, right? Because sometimes like I know for me and some of my clients, it's like, I want to have I want to create trust with other people, and I want other people to trust me, and I want other people to love me. But it's kind of like that old thing, like we can't have that until we have it ourselves within. So I think it starts, I think anything, whether it's at work, whether it's with a not-for-profit, whether it's with a life change, it has to start with yourself. And so this whole notion of, you know what's right for you and you know what you believe, right? And so tuning out some of that external noise, tuning out the negativity, tuning out this won't work, or it's too hard, or it's too overwhelming. And if you know deep down that this is the right thing, then that conviction is going to drive your confidence, right? It's going to drive the conversations that you have with your leadership team. So I think with anything, it starts with yourself. So if you can find some quiet time to do some reflection, like, what do I really believe? That's really going to, I think, be helpful.
Vera, I could just listen to you all day.
Thanks, Ellie.
Um, Thank you. I really appreciate it. And as we kind of wrap up, just a reminder, this is, the Pay Equity Guide for Nonprofit Organizations, available on Amazon. Oh, thank you. And we are talking about chapter 5 today, which is about leadership buy-in, which is not necessarily a separate part of pay equity work. It's built into all of that, but we really kind of talk about the pieces of like connecting it to business objective, the data people may want to see, and some examples of that are in this chapter. And next week, I'm going to be, one of the things we talk about in here is pay transparency, and that is kind of some of the buy-in piece. So my live next week will be about pay transparency. Well, thank you, Vera, for joining. I would love for people to connect with you. What are the best ways that people can stay in touch with you?
Yeah, thanks. Well, I'm here on Instagram. My handle is Create Your Best Chapter, or my website is createyourbestchapter.com. So if anyone wants to reach out, I'd love to connect. And thank you so much for this. This has been so fun, and it was really awesome, helping you out with your book and seeing you on this journey. And for anyone who works for not-for-profits, get the book.
Well, thank you so much, Vera. I appreciate that. And y'all have an amazing last weekend, last weekend of August, 1st of September.
That's right. You too, Sally.
Thanks, y'all. Bye.
Bye.